There's apparently a big difference between what Michael Cohen can say in public testimony and what he can say in closed-door testimony. One of the most important answers, if not the most answer, that Michael Cohen gave in his public testimony last week was this.
Is there any other wrongdoing or illegal act that you are aware of regarding Donald Trump that we haven't yet discussed today?
Yes, and again, those are part of the investigation that's currently being looked at by the Southern District of New York.
Joining our discussion now, the congressman who asked that question, Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, who will also be in the closed-door hearing with Michael Cohen tomorrow in the House Intelligence Committee. And Eugene Robinson, who has watched more congressional investigations from the press gallery than any of us, is with us. He is a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor for the Washington Post. He's also an MSNBC political analyst. And Congressman, I want to ask you about what the difference is, if you can tell us, between the public testimony and the issues that Michael Cohen can get into and the private testimony. And have you learned more in the closed-door testimony than you did in the public testimony?
Thanks for having me on, Lawrence. Yes, you do learn a little more in a closed setting because you can get into a lot more detail. You can even talk about classified information. This is down in the SCIF, or the underground bunker beneath the Capitol. And there are no cameras. And I think that the fact that there are no cameras means that there aren't the same theatrics that you saw, for instance, with the Republicans in the oversight hearing. So you do get to learn a little more, and the discussion is a little, or the Q&A is a little more sober.
And, Gene, it seems that the public is in support of what the House Democrats are doing. We have a poll tonight asking the question, should Congress do more to investigate Michael Cohen's claims about Donald Trump's behavior? Yes, 58%. That is pretty solid support, Gene.
Yeah, that's pretty solid support. All that polling was about how people view President Trump's truthfulness versus Michael Cohen's, and it's fascinating that people think Congress ought to do its job. I mean, this is Congress's job, and we shouldn't forget that it's not just an option for Congress to investigate possible potential criminal wrongdoing by the president. Congress has a responsibility to do that, and can't and shouldn't and must not just sort of sit back and let it pass, as was done in the past 2 years. So Republicans wouldn't mention the name of President Trump at that oversight hearing, but Democrats will. I hope Republicans ultimately will too, because these investigations have to be done.
Congressman, why did you ask Michael Cohen that question about any other possible illegal acts? Did you have reason to believe that there are more?
In part, yes. But I was also trying to close out the questioning and just, make sure that we weren't leaving anything on the table, that there wasn't something that we forgot to ask him about that he wanted to talk about. In this particular case, he said that he could not talk about it because the Southern District of New York was examining it. I would just point out the previous question I asked was perhaps related to this. He said that his last communication with the Trump administration, or President Trump himself, was 2 months after the raid, but he couldn't go into that either because it was under investigation by the Southern District of New York.
And Gene, the New York Times is out tonight with more on these checks that were written by Donald Trump to reimburse Michael Cohen, according to Michael Cohen. And it's a fascinating collection now of these checks because they change accounts. We see in the Times reporting what we already knew, that the some checks written by Alan Weisselberg and Donald Trump Jr. But we saw just that one in the hearing that was written in August, signed by Donald Trump. Now we're seeing that starting in May, according to the checks reproduced in the New York Times tonight, all of the checks came from Donald Trump's, what appears to be his personal checking account. There's no indication of any business on that particular check, and signed by Donald Trump starting in May. The rest of the checks that are revealed by the New York Times tonight are from that Donald J. Trump account, signed by Donald Trump, going right through November into December. And Gene, for some reason, They changed accounts where that money was coming from, switched it out of a Trump business account and moved it into what appears to be a Donald Trump personal account. And that may be because Alan Weisselberg started to get very nervous about what this was.
It could be. Maybe that's the reason, because just stepping back from it, it looks as if they just abandoned the cover story, right? If it was coming out of the trust account, that was consistent, at least with the false cover story that this was some sort of retainer agreement. If it's going to be just Donald Trump writing a personal check to Michael Cohen, it can't be a business attorney relationship retainer. It's just Trump reimbursing him for the money that he shelled out for Stormy Daniels. I mean, the only thing that makes sense, since it's unlikely, I think, that Donald Trump Jr. would get nervous and would say, wait a minute. Perhaps it is that Weisselberg said, hold on a minute, this isn't right. We'll just have to see. I suspect the Southern District of New York has an opinion on this.
Carson, we didn't hear any questions about that, hearing about why they switched accounts. But now that we've seen so many more of these checks as of tonight with the New York Times reporting, is that something you expect follow-up on in the committee? And do you expect to hear in the committee from Alan Weisselberg about why the accounts changed in making these payments?
Quite possibly, yes. I think that following the hearing, Chairman Cummings was asked who are the next witnesses that he would want to see before the committee, and he just simply said, follow the transcript. As you know, Mr. Weisselberg appeared in the transcript multiple times. Can I just point out one thing, and perhaps you alluded to this earlier, but not once did the Republicans question the veracity of those checks. They didn't question the signature on those checks or the fact that it came from Donald Trump's bank account in some of the checks and from other bank accounts and the others. In fact, they didn't impugn or attack the credibility of any of those checks. And so in my humble opinion, that was a tacit admission of that evidence.
And, Gene, the only mumblings that we've heard from any Republican about the check is actually Lindsey Graham offering his own opinion that it's unusual to pay for crimes with checks. That's the best the Republicans have come up with.
It is unusual. It's kind of lame, and it's really dumb. But none of those adjectives rules out this having been a check used to pay for a crime.
We're going to have to take a break there. Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi and Eugene Robinson, thank you both very much for joining our discussion tonight. And when we come back, new reports that President Trump also pressured